So many dreams, and the graveyard of dreams at the end of somebody's life, or just compiled of everybody's life put together, is so much greater than the graveyard of people dying of the dreams that were fulfilled. And what we need to understand is that we need to figure out what it is we could start to do to make sure that we're living the life that we want, and the dreams that we have, whether they're really big or just really small, we can start to accomplish them. And I think we've all have different things that we want to be working on. There are different areas of our life that we want to really look to maximize, but we're trying to figure out how we could do it. Whether it's in our financial life, whether it's in our health and our relationships, maybe it's something you've been working on for a couple of weeks, months, probably years, and we just haven't seen that success yet. And everyone's telling us like, no, you just got to keep doing it. Come on, you got to be out there. You got to make sure that you're going to just like go for it and like grit it out, and like you'll get there. But at a certain time, you just start to question yourself, and you're like, when is this going to happen? Like I see other people doing it, and even if like, okay, maybe they're not actually doing it and they're just pretending, regardless, like I believe it's true. I believe it can really happen. But what's going on? Why can't I just attain it? Why can't I just reach that? And if we could start to understand our dreams and what it is we're supposed to be expecting during this transition of us trying to reach our dreams, that could be the key that helps us keep us going, helps us learn the right things that we need to be learning in order to become successful. Because the loss of hope and that feeling and the emotional drainage and the what everyone's saying about you or what you think everybody's saying about you is so burdensome, and we put so much weight on ourselves, and it really surrounds everything, and everything else could be amazing. We all know that, where one thing in our life is not great, and then everything else is just like terrible. And if we could start to understand, hey, you know what, how can I focus on this one thing? How can I start to decompartmentalize what's going on over here? So you know what, although this thing that I'm working on is not great, but everything else is great. And one of the early ways I used to look at this was, imagine yourself sitting at a desk, and above your desk is a wall, and on the wall there are different bins, and each bin is a different area of your life. So it's your health, your finances, your relationships, your religious level, or your spiritual level, like all these different areas in your life that you think is important. And I highly recommend checking out a wheel of life if you have not done so. Definitely check out a wheel of life. You could Google it, get a wheel of life, definitely fill it out. If you don't know what I'm talking about, email me, I'll send you something. And what we have to recognize is that we all have these different buckets, and sometimes we're just focused on some buckets more than others. And sometimes we're trying to fill in certain buckets, and then what ends up happening is other buckets in our life end up just not being filled. And then when we look back, we're like, shoot, like I really messed that one up. Now you start focusing on that one, and then something else takes a hit. And it's this constant juggle of trying to make sure that we're focusing on everything. And one of the sad realities, I think, is that people understand that there are certain things that are going to be priorities to us. Our health is a priority. We just don't think about it. We're, maybe you're younger, you never thought about it as much, or, you don't, your body's not catching up yet. But there's going to be a time when you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't do that thing. Or maybe I'm not as healthy as I thought. Or you look down, you're like, this is not the body that I ever thought I would have. Or maybe it's your finances saying like, oh my gosh, this is like, I have not been focusing on my long-term investments. Like, okay, I've been focusing every month to cover the bills and this and that, but like I have no savings. And I think a big place that happens is in relationships. So we're so focused on our work and we're so focused socially, but we're not working on our relationships with our spouse, with our kids. And then you wake up later and you're like, oh my gosh, my kids don't even know who I am. And how many people do I know that work so hard and they're hardworking and they're successful, but that success in one area of their life is so detrimental to other areas of their life. And there's a balance, and I'm not judging anybody for this. And I think we all need to ask ourselves these questions, but also try to figure out what is something we could do. How can we do the small things? Because I don't think you need to be hanging out with your kid for hours a day to be able to have a relationship with them. But if you're working hard, do you have that 5 minutes with them, that you're present, that you're focusing on them? Or with your spouse, do you have 10 minutes at the end of the day to just see how their day was? Because everyone's doing crazy, busy things. And you can start to understand this, it really starts to shift everything for us. And there's certain expectations that I want to talk about. And it's just certain ideas and maybe tools that we can start to use to see how we could keep these dreams alive. Because as we go, the gas tank of our dreams diminishes, and we try to refill it as much as we can. So I'm just hoping that this message is just a little bit, just gives you that energy, just a little bit more to keep going, to keep trying, to try to get more creative with it. And hopefully we'll figure out what that thing is missing. I'm not here to say it's going to be okay, because I have no idea if it's going to work out. And that's sort of the scary part about this. But One of the frames I like to ask myself is it still worth it? Let's say it doesn't work out. Is it still worth it to try? How many people have not tried to succeed at something and then they never did, and then they're living about a life of what if? So let's say you did try and you didn't succeed, or so-called succeed. So is that something that is a bad thing? Is that a negative thing? It's frustrating. It's annoying. It's not ideal. But guess what? It does not mean that it's not that's not a success. And the fact that you're trying, the fact you're putting yourself out there is something that is so important and so special. And there might be different times in your life that you're going to be focusing more on certain things. And might be times you're focusing on other things. And might be times you're taking more risk, and certain times that you're going to be spending more time with your family. And recognizing that, I think, is important as well. And knowing which season you're in, because we all have the seasons. There's going to be the summer seasons. There's going to be the winter seasons. And once we understand that, that could be something that we could start to shift. And I think the biggest part about this whole thing, the reason why people use so much energy and so much of that tank of their dreams, of their hopes, of their dreams, is because they keep talking about that word failure. They keep talking about how they haven't seen success, and therefore it implies that they're a failure. And that's not true. There's so many other things that we've been working on. On my entrepreneur journey, you have this idea like things are going to work out amazing and you're going to just succeed at everything. And you jump in, and like for me, I quit my W-2, or sort of quit my W-2, left my W-2, or was asked to leave my W-2. And then all of a sudden, like, you jump into entrepreneurship, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to be amazing. I'm going to spend all this time. Now I have the time. I have no excuses. And then you start, and then like, wait, I do have excuses. Wait, why am I not trying as hard? Well, I didn't really expect this to be this difficult. I thought like in a couple of weeks, months, maybe give me half a year, I'll be successful. Wait, why hasn't it happened yet? A year later, wait, what? What's going on? A year and a half later? And then you ask yourself, like, is this really worth it? Is this something that I want? Where I am in my business today, where I want to be? No, I'm not. Do I have this pressure that I need to be performing more? Yes, 100%. And I think that's normal, and I think that's okay. And I think that's part of the drive, and that pain, in a way, is something that we can start to use to really see what it is that we could start to use from it. That pain, on the one hand, we can use it as something that's going to knock us down and give up and fail, or we could use it as a reminder to say, hey, all those people that messed up, all those people that failed, they failed because they felt the same exact way I feel, and they couldn't handle it. And I don't want to be like that person. Even if I'm going to get it to the next time this happens, this next feeling. But at least I took it another step further. And if we could keep saying that to ourselves, and we could just keep moving forward with the uncertainty, and that's the scariest part, because we don't even know if it's going to work out. That's going to be the thing that's going to help us. And so many people are so uncertain, so scared about what might happen or what might not happen. And if we can start to say to ourselves, hey, you know what? We do have this ability. We could keep moving forward. We have a choice to keep moving forward. Maybe it's not the ideal plan that we thought. Maybe there's other ways we have to try to figure out what's going on. But I'm going to keep moving forward. And as long as I keep moving, I'm not failing. And I'm going to keep learning. And one of the biggest shifts I make with the young adults that I work with, and the adults I work with, is understanding that it's not failure, it's just feedback. And we think a certain way. We think we should show up a certain way. And based on our certain skills that we have already, that we should become successful in any area. We think we know how a relationship really works. But until you're in it, and until you're going through the quote unquote hard times, you know how a relationship's supposed to be. How are you supposed to react? How are you supposed to respond to maybe something that your spouse says to you that it is hurtful? How are you supposed to respond to something that maybe for your best interest they're saying it, but guess what? It doesn't feel so great on the inside. And if we can start to understand that, that's going to be the biggest shift. So recognizing that it's not failure, it's just feedback. Just like when you're creating a business, you want to get the feedback to see what's working and what's not working. So with our lives also, we have that ability to understand what's working and what's not working. And I think some of the expectations that a lot of people just don't recognize and they don't necessarily feel is, number one, is that they know it's going to take a long time. I think I would say there's two different types of people. I say the types of people who I was, and now the person who I am. Right? When I first started, I thought it was going to happen like that. I'm like, I'm a different guy. I'm going to make sure it happens. I'm really productive. I'm really disciplined. I know what it takes. I know what's going to do, and it's going to happen real quick. I'm going to become a millionaire by the age I'm 30. Yeah, that didn't happen. So now what? So now what am I? What now? What now? I'm lost. now I'm a failure because I wasn't a millionaire by the age of 30. Like, that's ridiculous. And if we could start to say, hey, you know what? There's two types of people. Number one is the person who I was, where we want everything quick, but then you soon realize that, you know what? No, things do take a little more time. And the longer it takes you to learn that, then the more impatient you're going to be and the more upset and frustrated you're going to be. But then you have the other camp of people where I think I am now, where it's like, no, my goals are going to take a couple of years. I just started a goal right now, last week or the week and a half ago, that I know it won't be happening for another 7 years. That's like a really long goal, but I'm like totally fine with it. I'm in no rush. And I know as long as I stay consistent and disciplined, and they're going to be the ups and they're going to be the downs and the days I'm not in the mood and this and that, I'm going to hit my goal. And if we could start to play that game of saying, I know it's going to take long, that's a whole different atmosphere. But what ends up happening is that we know it takes long, but we're still impatient because we didn't realize it would take this long. I didn't realize it would take 2 or 3, 4, 5 years. And you look at most successful people, not the ones who are the quote unquote overnight, because I really don't believe there's an overnight success. So one of the coaches that I listened to, Rich Litvin. So he talks about how he made a blog. He's like, how to become an overnight success in 15 years. And if we could start to understand, yeah, it might take 15 years, but is it worth it? I think so. You have to figure it out. We have to try to make it work. We have to try to understand what it is we could do. We have to keep working at it. And it might be difficult. We have other people we have to rely on, or other people we have to work with. But if you could see that and understand, that could be a totally different game. Another misconception I think people have is they don't realize how hard it is. I think they say it's going to be hard, but they don't know what the definition of hard is. I got that idea from Alex Hormozy, and I ever since I heard it, I use it all the time when I'm setting goals. When I start to teach the framework that we use in Next Gen to teach goal setting, we have this framework. And one of the misconceptions that I talk about is hard work, because if I would ask anybody, and any of you listening, is the thing that you're wanting to accomplish, did you know it was going to be hard before you started? So everybody always says, yes, it's going to be hard. Things we don't know what really hard really means. And because we don't know what the definition of hard really means, when it happens, we feel so lost and alone. I remember when I was starting this Next Gen program, it was during the summer, and I promoted it in a newspaper, and I thought for sure I would get like a lot of phone calls, enough to cover my expenses of at least the ads. I literally got one phone call and wasn't even about the program. Now, all of a sudden, you start to put yourself in a situation where, wait a second, that thing didn't work. My one plan, my one person, my one resource that I had fell through. And now what? Now that's really hard. I didn't know. I wasn't planning on that thing being hard. It's like you plan on going to the gym like 5 days a week, and all of a sudden your kid, like my kid a couple of days ago, woke up at 3:30 in the morning, was up till 5, just in your bed, just like kicking you and like just rolling around like you didn't sleep. And you're like, wait, I'm supposed to wake up at 5 though. How am I not supposed to do that now? I didn't realize that's the hard thing. And these are the different things, the different concepts and ideas that we need to have, the expectations of understanding that it's going to be hard, and we don't even know what hard means. And that feeling of feeling lost, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know where the next lead's going to come from, or I don't know how I'm going to have this conversation with a loved one. That is the definition of hard. That is the definition of the work that we need to do. And once we do that, once we understand that, we give ourselves permission to step into the work that we want. We're not scared of it. Yeah, it might be fearful. It might be a little scary, but we're still courageous in the moment. We're still stepping into it because we understand that this is normal. This is how it's supposed to go. This is the way the story was written. And if we can expect what happens, and if every story was the same, we wouldn't be interested in stories. But because every story has their own curveball, that's what's missing. And in regards to missing, I think this is another misconception. It's the wrong way around. So I think it's a more positive misconception that people have. But realizing that there's so much, we think like if we're working in a specific area, that there's so much missing. Like, oh my gosh, there's like so many steps I have no idea about, like what to do. But if we really think about it, there's usually one or two, and there's not so many more. And usually we're only one or two ideas, one or two, things that we can start to work on, that if we could fix, then everything is going to work. Of course, there's always going to be different ways to work on it and in different areas, but understanding that if we can start to focus and recognize, hey, you know what, there's more to this than we think. And it's really only one or two things. that could be something that could really be really helpful to say like, oh my gosh, it's not 100 things, but yeah, there might be 100 things that I need to learn, but it's only the one or two big things that once I get that down pat, then it'll be fine. And I think if we can start to feel that and understand that, then I think that's something that we can start to work on. And different thoughts and ideas that we can start to really focus on that could really help us through these times is to understand that, like Jim Rohn says, more important than what you get in life is who you become. So even if you're going through something and you try something and you try for months or even years, you're trying to become an entrepreneur for 3 years and you're trying to grow a business and like it's just not happening. If we're only focusing on the result of becoming successful at business as the result, then guess what? Yeah, you could call yourself a failure. But if you could say, no, I'm working on these other character traits along the way to become somebody, not about the result, then guess what? Then you're going to become that success. Because regardless of what happens, we see that success. And I think so many people judge themselves based on the result and not on the process that they're so much harder on themselves. So if you're going through something and you haven't seen that success yet, what have you become in that moment? What are the skills you've learned? Who as a person, your own personal development, have you elevated to in order to be able to see that? And I think if we could do that, I think that's something that could really start to shift a lot of different things in our own lives. Another cool thing about this feeling and this emotion that you're going through, which is terrible, is to understand that, hey, you know what? Other people are going through this also. You start to relate to other people. You may not talk about it. And for me to talk about it, it's a little emotional. I don't know if you hear it in my voice, but I'm a little passionate about it because I think people don't talk about it. I don't talk about it so much. And it's scary and it's hurtful and it's lonely. It's so lonely because nobody wants to talk about how they haven't seen that result yet. And if we can start to say, hey, you know what is going on here? That could be the different thing. Then we can start to figure out what's going on. The idea of that other people might be looking at us and staring at us and maybe we have to make a career change or maybe we have to do something different. It's also very scary, but understand that they're not actually looking at us. So even if you posted on your LinkedIn, oh, I'm changing my position, my job. And it's like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to know. And now what are they going to say? And what do they think? They're going to think I'm a failure. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. You have to do what's good for you, number one. And number two is they're not actually thinking about you. They might say it's okay, nice. Like, how many people have you seen got a new job and you're like, oh, that guy's a failure? Like, no. There's this one guy who I know, really big following. He transitioned his job a couple of months ago and he's really recently just transitioned again. And I'm like, good for him. I'm happy he's doing something that he likes and wants to be doing. Maybe he got promoted, maybe he did this, maybe he did that. And if we can start to understand it like that, nobody's really thinking about us. No offense. Nobody's actually thinking about you. Everyone's really caring about themselves, their own issues, their own problems that they're going through. And just because we do something or say something does not mean that anything else is off. So you have to understand that you're not alone. Everyone else is going through similar struggles. In order to become successful, you have to go through these tough times. Maybe we didn't want to sign up for it. Maybe we were too naive to know what it really was, these tough times. But at the end of the day, if we keep going through it, if we keep at it, that is the thing that's going to help us. And there might be hybrid. There might be have to have a hybrid version. So instead of going to the gym 5 times a week, you go 2 times a week because that's better than going no times. And if maybe in your business you're becoming an entrepreneur, then all of a sudden instead of going full-time entrepreneur, you go you do your entrepreneur thing as a side gig until it picks up again. Whatever it is that you need to do, understand that that's the thing that you need to be doing best for yourself. And I think it's so important because so many people don't realize that this is all part of the journey. Have that right expectation. Not that it's easy and not that we want it or not that we wanted this on anybody else, but understanding that part of it is the difficulty, is the struggle. And it's why most people don't get it. And regardless of whatever else happens, regardless of whoever else sees this or not sees this or sees your story or whether you succeed or not, understand it's going to be one heck of a story that you're going to be able to tell other people, that you'll be able to share with other people. Wishing you all the best, wishing you so much success, and hopefully you'll get out of it soon enough and you'll learn that one skill in order to be able to take it to the next level.